Hello friends, welcome back. So today, it is the last day in November, so today is November wrap-up day. So I'm going to go ahead, I'm going to let you know what I've read this month. I had a really good reading month. I read 10 books, and I'm feeling really good about it. I may have forgotten a book in there somewhere. I still feel like I'm missing something that I read, but it's not in this list. So if I find out what it is, I'll just put it down below as well. But anyways, let's start with the two books I do not physically have in my possession because I got them from the library. So the first one is Heir of Fire. I had started it at the end of October, but I didn't get a chance to finish before November, so I finished that in the first part of November. I really enjoyed it. I can't tell you too much, obviously, because it's the third book in a series, and it's just one of those things where I don't like to spoil people without fair warning. So it's one of those things where I really enjoyed it. I enjoyed the introduction of the characters that we met in the third book. Some of my favorite characters started to do some really butthead things, so that made me mad. Those of you who have read the series know what I'm talking about. And so from there, I'm going to leave it. I really enjoyed it. I would probably give it a 4.5 out of 5 stars, if not 5 out of 5 stars. It was a really solid book. I really enjoyed it. I know some people said they didn't love it as well as some of the others, but I really enjoyed it. I'm interested to see where the story goes from here. And that's all on Heir of Fire. Next up would be the novella series attached to, well, the novella compilation attached to the series, which is The Assassin's Blade, again by Sarah J. Maas. And when it comes to this one, it made me angry. So angry. I could scream at the rooftops. Honestly, it's the least favorite book I've read in the entire series. I don't know if that's more emotional or just I didn't feel like the writing was as strong. I felt like it easily could have been one book instead of 5 small ones inside of it. You know, it would have needed maybe, a couple transition sentences or a transition chapter in between each, but you easily could have read it all as one book, which is why it's all compiled as one book, I think. And, I think it wouldn't have taken too much effort to blend it all together so it's all one story. So that bugged me a little bit about that, but anyway, I digress. Again, I would probably give it 4 out of 5 stars. I mean, Sarah's writing style is fantastic, so it's hard for me to give it much lower than that on my star rating. So, but I have to say it was my least favorite book to date on that. So let's go ahead and move on to the books I physically have with me. First being the audiobook I read, which was Well of Ascension by Brandon Sanderson. This is the second book in the first Mistborn trilogy. This is the sequel to The Final Empire. I'm loving this series so much. Again, 5 out of 5 stars. I mean, you get so much development and story in this, and you learn little bits of things that you need to know for Hero of Ages. I'm learning because I've started listening to that one now. And I'm really enjoying this. If you have not read The Final Empire or any Brandon Sanderson at all, I highly recommend checking out the original Mistborn trilogy, the first book being The Final Empire, second Well of Ascension, third Hero of Ages. You can usually find them in a box set. So highly recommend, highly recommend. Yes. All right, next up is Jacob T. Marley by William Bennett. Sorry, I always try to say it backwards. This is a companion novel to A Christmas Carol, which I also read this month. So let's talk about both for a minute. So Jacob T. Marley is Jacob Marley's story that led up to A Christmas Carol and while A Christmas Carol is going on. Kind of like On the Other Side in Heaven kind of a situation. And of the two, they're both fantastic. I enjoyed Jacob T. Marley more because I feel like it's a more fleshed out story. Because, A Christmas Carol, the characters aren't fleshed out too much. You know the basics. But in this one, it fleshes out the characters a little more. You learn a little more about their backstory, how they got to become the way they are, things like that. So I highly recommend reading Jacob T. Marley. I always try to read this during November or December since I got it from a client years ago. And she gave me the book as a set. You can tell because they match. But I try to read them both. I usually read Jacob T. Marley first, and then I read A Christmas Carol. A Christmas Carol is always a breeze after I read Jacob T. Marley. And I always enjoy them. I read them every season, so it just helps get me in the right spirit of Christmas, and it just makes me happy to read them. Next up, Fairest from the Lunar Chronicles. This is the prequel. This is Lyanna's story. It is a side book. You don't have to read this to read the entire series, but I do recommend reading it. I feel like you learn a lot more about your villain and her relationship with certain characters. That is helpful as you read the series. I would read them in publication order, though, otherwise you might feel spoiled by some of the characters. So I would read this series in publication order. I have a complete Lunar Chronicles review that I will link down below, where you can get my full thoughts, opinions, and feels, as Jesse the reader would say, on this particular book, as well as the entire series. Which brings me to the next book, which is Winter, again from the Lunar Chronicles, always by Marissa Meyer. And this and Crest were my two favorite books in the entire series. Both of them got 5 out of 5 stars from me. I felt like every detail was necessary. It was 823 pages, and I read it in 36 hours. That's with working, sleeping, having a life. And I thoroughly enjoyed this book. I enjoyed the entire series, but this book in particular I felt was the perfect conclusion to the series. That's all I'm going to say about it. I do get more spoilery in my book talk about it, about the entire series. Again, that will be linked down below, so you can get more specific thoughts on that. But this book addresses the retelling of Snow White. Each book in the series is a retelling, the first being Cinderella, the second being Little Red Riding Hood, and the third being Rapunzel. So books 3 and 4, Crest and Winter, were my favorite books by far in the entire series, and I really, really, really enjoyed them. So I highly recommend the series. If you have not picked it up, it's high time. The series is over, so you don't have to wait for anything. You get everything all at once. Definitely go check it out. Next up, The Strange and Beautiful Sorrows of Ava Lavender. I love this book so much. I can't even hardly put it into words. This book is about a young girl named Ava Lavender who was born with wings, and about the story of her and her family and how she deals with life with wings. And the common thread through the whole story is love. It is beautiful. 5 out of 5 stars from me. I have a full review on this, so I will leave that down below. And you can check out more of my thoughts and more spoilery things about it there. Next up is Uprooted by Naomi Novik. This is a wonderful book about Agnieszka, and in her village, they are protected by this man named the Dragon. He is like this wizard, warlock, protector of their area. Every 10 years, he comes into the village and picks a servant. It's one of the 17-year-old girls. So through Agnieszka and her friend Kaja's growing up years, all growing up, they think it's Kaja that's going to be picked. You know, she's beautiful and elegant and refined and special. And when it comes to choosing day, Agnieszka's chosen instead. And there are specific reasons as to why, which I won't get into, but it's one of those things where neither of them really wanted to go. And it's a beautiful story, full of magic, full of wonder. I read this after Winter, so it took me a little bit longer to get through this one, but I wouldn't say it was a bad book at all. I would give it a solid 4 out of 5 stars. I probably would have gotten a higher star rating from me had I not just come off that high of Winter, but I did really enjoy this. I might go back in a while and reread it again and see if my star rating would change on it. For now, it's a solid 4. I really enjoyed it. I highly recommend it. It's a wonderful, wonderful story. A lot of people on BookTube have the a cover with like white, and it's very different, but I enjoy my cover. Once you've read the book, all of this makes way more sense. So I highly recommend it. Enjoy it. Next up is Fangirl by Rainbow Rowell. So, confession, I've never read a contemporary book, at least to my knowledge. I've never read a contemporary book until I read Fangirl. I really enjoyed Fangirl. I do plan on doing a full review on this particular book. It should be up later this week. And just know that I enjoyed it. I would give it, again, a solid 4 out of 5 stars. Rainbow Rowell's writing is very fun and lighthearted, and I loved the humor in this book. And so this story is about Kath, who is headed to college finally. Her and her twin, Ren, her twin, Ren, are headed to the same college. Kath assumes they're going to be roommates. Ren wants to branch out on her own, so Ren just kind of leaves Kath to fend for herself. So she ends up with this surly, grumpy roommate who always has this guy with her, and, you know, she's just kind of adjusting to college and life and the classes that she's taking. I really enjoyed this. I love the ship in this book so hard. I'm not going to say it out loud till I do the review and I get to spoilery sections because I don't want to spoil it for anybody who hasn't read it. If you haven't already been spoiled by it anyway. So, know that I really enjoyed Fangirl. I've just come to learn that when it comes to language in books, you know, like if there's a lot of swearing, I usually will give it a lower star rating just due to the fact that I don't enjoy reading the swearing. There was a little bit in this, and so I think that did affect my star rating, but the story's solid. I still would recommend it. I would just warn anybody that I know is sensitive to language like me that there is some. Outside of that, I think it's a really enjoyable read. It's really fun, and I really, really like it. So that was essentially everything I got read in the month of November. Like I said, if I remember anything I forgot, I will leave it down below. And I will see you next time with my December TBR. Have an awesome Monday. Bye.